They say women my age are invisible. I'm 55 years old. I should be planning retirement, organizing book clubs, becoming
It's not
someone's favorite aunt.
possible.
Instead, I'm staring at a pregnancy test in a Seoul bathroom, carrying the child of a 36-year-old Korean gangster who looks at me like I'm the only thing worth protecting in this brutal world. His name is Park Shi-woo. His hands have taken countless lives, and now those same hands now rest on my belly like I'm made of glass. I came to Korea to disappear, and now he has made sure I'd never be invisible again. The autumn semester at Hanyang University had become Chiamaka's sanctuary. At 55, she'd earned her invisibility. Middle-aged, foreign, a black woman in a country that barely acknowledged her existence outside academic spaces. Perfect. She'd come to Seoul to disappear from Lagos society and its suffocating expectations about divorced, childless women who'd chosen books over remarriage. Her contemporary African literature class was her pride. 23 students, mostly Korean, all brilliant in their own ways. Especially Park Min-ho, front row, whose essays on post-colonial narratives could have been published. The problem was Min-ho's older brother. Park Shi-woo appeared every Tuesday and Thursday, always 15 minutes before class ended, always leaning against the doorframe with that predatory grace that made her students shift nervously in their seats. He was 36 but carried himself with the authority of someone much older. Expensive suits that whispered wealth. Dark eyes that missed nothing. And that presence, dangerous, magnetic, utterly inappropriate for an academic building. Chiamaka knew what he was. Everyone did. The Park family ran half of Seoul's underground, their legitimate businesses barely concealing the criminal empire beneath. Shi-woo was being groomed to take over from his uncle, and the violence that came with that position clung to him like expensive cologne. She despised him on principle. The first time she confronted him, 3 weeks into the semester, she'd cornered him outside her classroom while Min-ho used the restroom. Her words had been sharp, professorial, cutting. She told him he was wasted potential. That his intelligence was obvious. You could see it in how he absorbed conversations, in the shrewd calculation behind those dark eyes. His brother had inherited brilliance from somewhere, after all. But Shi-woo had chosen to waste himself on crime, on violence, on playing king of a broken kingdom. He'd smiled. Actually smiled, slow and amused, like she'd said something fascinating rather than insulting. That smile had infuriated her more than anger would have. He kept coming back, kept watching her lecture, with that unsettling focus, kept making her classroom feel smaller, the air thinner, her skin more aware of itself. Chiamaka told herself it was irritation, frustration at wasted potential. Nothing more. She was lying to herself even then. It happened on a Tuesday in late October. Chiamaka had stayed late at the university library, buried in research about Yoruba oral traditions. When she finally emerged, Seoul had transformed into that particular autumn darkness that was both beautiful and isolating. The subway would be packed with the evening rush. She decided to walk partway, needing air and space to think. The side street was a shortcut she'd taken dozens of times. Quiet, residential, safe. Until it wasn't. 3 young men materialized from the shadows like something conjured from her worst fears. Early 20s, drunk or high, with that particular aggression that came from alcohol and entitlement. They blocked her path with the casual cruelty of predators who'd found prey. The slurs came first. Monkey. Dirty. Go back to Africa. The usual poison that Seoul's underbelly sometimes spat at people who looked like her. Chiamaka tried to walk past them, head high, dignified. 55 years of being a black woman in hostile spaces had taught her the stance.
Stay calm.
Stay moving. Don't engage. One grabbed her arm. She yanked free, but they circled closer. Hands reaching, voices rising. The leader, tattoos crawling up his neck like prison art, shoved her against the wall hard enough that her head cracked against brick. Fear flooded her system, cold and primal. Her bag fell. Her phone skittered across pavement. She opened her mouth to scream, and then he was there. Park Shi-woo emerged from the darkness like an avenging angel, silent and utterly lethal. What happened next lasted maybe 30 seconds, but would replay in Chiamaka's mind for months. Shi-woo moved with brutal efficiency. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Bone cracked. Someone screamed. Bodies hit pavement. He didn't just fight them. He dismantled them, each strike calculated to cause maximum damage. The violence was surgical,
Terrifying.
beautiful in its precision. When the last thug fell, unconscious or close to it, Shi-woo turned to her. Blood spattered his knuckles. His breathing was barely elevated, and his eyes, those dark, dangerous eyes, scanned her with an intensity that made her knees weak. He moved toward her slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Chiamaka's body betrayed her completely. She'd been holding herself together through sheer will, but now the adrenaline crashed. Her hands shook. Her breath came in harsh gasps. Tears burned her eyes, humiliating and unstoppable. She was going to fall apart right here in this alley, and she hated it, hated being weak, hated. His arms came around her.
Strong.
Solid.
Safe.
Chiamaka collapsed against his chest without meaning to, her body making decisions her mind couldn't process. She pressed her face into his shirt and shook, somewhere between crying and hyperventilating, unable to control either. He held her through it. One hand cradled the back of her head, fingers threading through her natural curls with unexpected gentleness. His other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. He murmured something in Korean, soft, soothing sounds that her brain couldn't translate, but her body understood as comfort. And then it hit her. The sensation. His chest was warm and solid against her cheek. His heartbeat, steady and strong, thundered beneath her ear. His hand in her hair sent electricity skating across her scalp. His scent, expensive cologne layered over something essentially male, filled her lungs with every shaky breath. Heat flooded through her system, completely different from fear. Dangerous in an entirely new way. Her breath changed. Hitched.
Caught.
She felt his body tense in response, felt the subtle shift in how he held her, still protective but now aware. Acutely, devastatingly aware. Chiamaka pulled back sharply, face hot with something that wasn't embarrassment but close. She couldn't look at him, couldn't process what had just happened, what her body had just felt. Desire. Raw and undeniable. For a man young enough to be her son. A criminal. Everything she should despise. She mumbled something about being fine, about needing to go. Her voice sounded wrecked. Shi-woo caught her elbow when her legs proved unreliable. His touch burned through her sleeve. He didn't let her refuse the ride home. Didn't argue when she insisted she was fine. Just guided her to his car, something expensive and black, and drove her to Haebangkon in silence. At her building, she fled without looking back. Inside her apartment, Chiamaka stood in the dark and pressed shaking fingers to her lips. Her whole body felt like a live wire. Hot. Uncomfortable. Aware of things she hadn't been aware of in decades. She was 55 years old.
Too old for this.
Too smart for this. Too sensible for this. Her body disagreed violently. That night, she dreamed of his hands. The same hands that had destroyed those men, cradling her head with devastating gentleness. She woke aching in ways she'd forgotten were possible. Chiamaka spent the next 2 weeks becoming an expert in evasion. She rescheduled her office hours, left through side exits, avoided anywhere Shi-woo might appear. When he showed up for Minho, she was already gone, her classroom empty, her presence erased. It was cowardly. She knew it. But 55 years of survival had taught her when to fight and when to flee, and whatever this feeling was, this heat, this awareness, this hunger she refused to name, required distance. Except distance didn't help. At night, alone in her apartment, the awareness intensified. She'd lie in bed and remember how his chest felt against her cheek, how his fingers had threaded through her hair, how his voice had sounded, low and soothing, promising safety she hadn't felt in years. She remembered being married once, decades ago. Remembered going through the motions of physical intimacy without ever feeling this desperate, aching want. Her ex-husband had made her feel like duty. Shi-woo made her feel like hunger. She hated it. Hated him for awakening something she'd successfully buried. Hated herself for wanting a man who was everything wrong. Too young, too dangerous, too impossible. The text came on a Thursday night. Unknown number.
Short. Direct.
You've been avoiding me, Professor. Her heart kicked into her throat. She stared at the message for 5 full minutes before responding. I don't know what you're talking about. His reply was immediate. Liar. That word. Accusation and observation, and something else she couldn't name. She should block the number. Should maintain professional distance. Should remember all the reasons this was inappropriate. Her fingers moved without permission. Thank you for what you did. You already thanked me. I ran away. You were upset. I was rude. A longer pause this time then. You were human. Something in her chest cracked at that.
Human.
When had anyone last acknowledged her humanity instead of just her titles, her age, her foreignness? Why did you do it? Save me. You know why.
She did.
God help her, she did. This is inappropriate. Probably. You're Minho's brother. And you're his professor. So, everything. Or nothing. Depends on what you choose. Her hands shook. This was dangerous territory. Crossing lines that existed for good reasons. But when had she last felt this alive? I should thank you properly. My office. Friday evening. I'll make tea. The message sent before she could reconsider. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. His response took longer this time, as if he understood the weight of what she'd just offered. What time? 7. She answered. I'll be there. He replied almost immediately. Chiamaka turned her phone face down and put her head in her hands. She was 55 years old, making decisions like a reckless teenager. This was insane. Friday couldn't come fast enough. Friday arrived wrapped in anxiety and anticipation. Chiamaka taught her morning class on autopilot, her mind already hours ahead. She cleaned her office 3 times. Brewed Earl Grey, neutral, professional. Changed her blouse twice, then changed back, then changed again. Told herself this was just courtesy, just proper gratitude between adults. The lies were becoming easier. At 6:50, she almost canceled. Her phone was in her hand, message half-typed, when the knock came. Her voice said come in before her brain could intervene. Park Shi-woo entered, and the office shrank around his presence. He'd dressed differently. Still expensive. The man probably didn't own anything cheap, but more casual. Dark jeans that fit perfectly. Black sweater. Leather jacket. His hair looked slightly disheveled, like he'd run his fingers through it. The calculated casualness of someone who wanted to appear relaxed but couldn't quite manage it. Something about that vulnerability made him more dangerous, not less. Chiamaka gestured to the chair across from her desk, not trusting her voice yet. He sat with that economical grace, eyes never leaving her face. She poured tea with hands that only trembled slightly, small miracle, and pushed a cup toward him. The normal sounds of ceramic and liquid felt impossibly loud in the charged silence. They sat like that for a moment, 2 people pretending this was normal, that the air wasn't crackling with everything unspoken. Chiamaka tried to begin the speech she'd rehearsed, formal, grateful, maintaining appropriate distance. What came out was far simpler. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that night. Shi-woo's fingers tightened on his teacup. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Neither have I. The admission hung between them like a confession. She should say something professorial now. Something about inappropriate feelings and age differences and professional boundaries. Should thank him again and send him away and go back to her safe, quiet, invisible life. Instead, she stood. Moved to the window because sitting felt impossible. Her reflection ghosted in the dark glass, a 55-year-old woman whose body had betrayed her completely. I don't understand this, she said quietly. I came to Seoul to disappear. To be invisible. To live quietly without anyone's expectations or judgment. Behind her, she heard him stand. Heard his footsteps cross the small office. And his voice came from close behind her. Too close. Not close enough. And you won't let me be invisible.
No.
Simple. Unapologetic. I won't. Why? She turned to face him, needing to understand. I'm 55 years old. You're 36. I'm your brother's professor. You're a criminal. He finished the word she'd avoided. I know what I am, Chiamaka. I know what my hands have done. I know you should despise me. I tried to. The admission escaped before she could stop it. For weeks, I tried to despise you. And now. Now she was standing close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Close enough to smell his cologne. Close enough that if she leaned forward just slightly, just an inch. Now I don't know what I feel.
Lie.
She knew exactly what she felt. This is insane. Probably. I'm too old for you. You keep saying that like it matters. It should matter.
Why?
Because society says so? Because people will judge. He stepped closer, just half a step, giving her space to retreat if she wanted. I've spent my entire life doing what people expect, being what my family needs, playing the role I was born into. And then I met you. His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. You see me, he continued quietly. Not the gangster. Not the heir. Not the monster everyone else sees. You look at me and see wasted potential. And that means you see potential at all. That's not. Let me finish. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You're brilliant. Passionate about things that matter.
You challenge me.
You're not afraid of me. And when I held you that night, when you shook in my arms, I felt something I've never felt before. What? The word came out breathless. Like I could be different. Like maybe there's more to me than violence and blood money. Like maybe he stopped jaw working. Like maybe I deserve something real. Chiamaka's eyes burned. This was a mistake. Had to be. Everything about this was wrong. The age gap, the power dynamics, his world, her career. Any rational person would step back now. Would thank him politely and send him away and never let this conversation happen again. She'd been rational her entire life. Been sensible. Been appropriate. Where had it gotten her? Divorced, lonely, invisible. This can't be casual. The words escaped before she could stop them. I don't know how to do casual. I'm too old for games. Something flashed in his eyes, relief, hunger, something darker. I don't want casual. Then what do you want? You. Simple. Devastating. However long you'll have me. The air between them felt electric. Chiamaka's heart hammered so hard, she was sure he could hear it. If we do this, she heard herself say, people will talk. They'll say terrible things. About both of us. Let them. Your family will adjust. My career will be discreet. I don't. She stopped because she didn't know how to finish that sentence. Didn't know what she was trying to say or argue or avoid. Shi-woo's hand slid to the back of her neck. The touch sent electricity down her spine. Tell me to leave, he said quietly. Tell me this is a mistake, and I'll walk out that door. I'll pick up Minho from your classes and never mention this again. And if I don't, then stop lying to yourself about what you want. The challenge hung between them like a dare. Chiamaka had spent 55 years being careful, being appropriate, following rules, building a life of quiet dignity that no one could criticize or judge. She was so tired of being careful. Her hand lifted, when had she decided to move, and fisted in his sweater. She pulled him down. Their lips met, and everything else ceased to matter. The kiss obliterated thought. Chiamaka had been kissed before. Of course she had. Been married, had relationships, understood the mechanics of physical intimacy. This wasn't that. This was hunger finally unleashed. This was every lonely night and quiet morning and moment of invisible existence crystallizing into desperate need. This was her body remembering it was alive, that it could want. That desire wasn't something reserved for younger women with flatter stomachs and fewer stretch marks. Shi-woo kissed her like she was oxygen, like he'd been drowning and she was air. His hands, those dangerous hands, cradled her face with shocking gentleness, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. She made a sound against his mouth, something between a gasp and a surrender. Her fingers tightened in his sweater, pulling him closer, needing more of this, more of him, more of everything she denied herself for decades. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she couldn't look at him, couldn't process what had just happened. His forehead pressed against hers. Chiamaka. Just her name. But the way he said it, rough, reverent, wrecked, made heat pool low in her belly. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I haven't, it's been so long since We'll figure it out. His thumb traced her swollen lips. Together. Together. The word felt like a promise and a threat. They didn't leave her office for hours. Sat on the floor because the chairs felt too formal, too distant. Talked in the way people talk when they're circling something inevitable, about small things that revealed larger truths. He told her about growing up in the Park family, about watching his father die when he was 16, shot by a rival family, about his uncle taking over and grooming him to be the heir, about Minho, his baby brother, the one pure thing in his violent world. She told him about Lagos. About a marriage that had slowly suffocated her. About coming to Seoul because no one here knew her story or had expectations about what a divorced, childless woman should be. Everyone in Lagos had an opinion, she said quietly. About why the marriage failed. Why I had no children. Why I chose career over family. I was too educated. Too independent. Too Western. Too much. You're not too much. His hand found hers in the dim office light. You're exactly enough. Something in her chest cracked at that simple statement. They kissed again. And again. Each time deeper, more desperate. His hands learned the curve of her waist, the soft reality of her middle-aged body. She learned the hard planes of his chest, the strength coiled beneath expensive clothing. She waited for shame. For self-consciousness about stretch marks and soft bellies and skin that wasn't 20 anymore. It never came. The way he touched her, reverent, hungry, completely focused, made her feel like the most desirable woman alive. At midnight, reality intruded. She had early classes. He had obligations he didn't specify, but she could guess. When can I see you again? He asked at her office door. Tomorrow? Too eager. She didn't care. Too long. She laughed, the sound surprising her. When had she last laughed like that? Light and young and happy? I have classes. After. Shi-woo. I'll wait. However long it takes. She kissed him again because she could. Because this dangerous, impossible man wanted her. Because for the first time in decades, she wanted back. Watching him leave felt like losing something essential. That night, alone in her apartment, Chiamaka stood in front of her mirror and really looked at herself. 55 years old. Gray threads in her natural curls. Lines around her eyes and mouth. A body that had lived, that carried the weight of decades. She'd spent so long thinking this body was finished.
Done.
Invisible. Shi-woo had looked at her like she was art. She touched her lips, still swollen from his kisses, and smiled. This was insane. Inappropriate. Dangerous. She couldn't wait to see him again. They fell into it like drowning. Every evening after her classes, he came to her. Sometimes her apartment, sometimes his, a penthouse in Gangnam that screamed wealth and isolation. They learned each other's bodies with the urgency of people who'd been starving without realizing it. Chiamaka discovered that passion at 55 was different than in her youth.
Deeper.
More conscious. Less concerned with performance, and more focused on connection. She wasn't trying to prove anything or be anything. She just was. And, miraculously, that seemed to be exactly what he wanted. Shi-woo was a generous lover in ways that surprised her. Patient. Attentive. Learning what made her gasp, what made her arch into his touch, what made her forget every reason this was impossible. The age gap that seemed so vast in daylight disappeared in darkness. His hands on her body erased years. Made her feel vital and desired, and desperately alive. They didn't talk about feelings. Didn't define what this was. It existed in a bubble separate from reality, just bodies and hunger, and the electric charge of being together. That was the agreement. Unspoken but understood. This was physical. Temporary. Two lonely people finding comfort in each other. Except the way he held her afterward, arms locked around her like she might disappear. The way he watched her lecture when he thought she wasn't looking, expression soft with something that looked dangerously like tenderness. The way he brought her ginger tea when she mentioned feeling unwell, the gesture simple but devastating in its thoughtfulness. And the way her heart stuttered when he walked into a room. The way she found herself thinking about him during faculty meetings. The way she saved small stories to tell him later, wanting to hear his laugh. This was supposed to be casual. Passion, without complication. It was already far more than that. Neither of them acknowledged it. Minho noticed something had changed in his brother. Mentioned it casually after class one day. Hyung seems different lately. Happier, maybe? He's been smiling at his phone. Chiamaka's heart kicked. That's nice. He won't tell me why. Must be a woman. About time. He's been alone too long. Guilt twisted in her stomach. She was sleeping with her student's brother. This was every kind of inappropriate. But when Shi-woo showed up that evening with takeout and that slow smile that made her knees weak, guilt evaporated under the heat of want. Seoul grew colder as November arrived. They stayed inside more, tangled in sheets, learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with bodies. Tell me something true, she said one night, head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. About what? Anything. Something no one else knows. He was quiet for a long moment, fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder.
I'm tired.
Of what? All of it. The violence. The blood. The constant calculation. I'm tired of being the monster everyone expects. She lifted her head to look at him. Then stop being one. It's not that simple. Isn't it? I have obligations.
Family.
People who depend on me. I can't just. I'm not asking you to abandon anyone. I'm asking if you ever imagine something different. His eyes met hers in the dim light. Since I met you? Constantly. The confession hung between them like something fragile and dangerous. Chiamaka knew she should pull back. Should remember this was temporary, physical, nothing more. Should protect herself from wanting things that were impossible. Instead, she kissed him. Slow.
Deep.
Pouring everything she couldn't say into the connection of lips and breath and skin. When he made love to her that night, it felt different. Less frantic. More like worship. Like he was memorizing her. Like this mattered more than either of them had agreed to let it matter. Afterward, holding her close, he whispered something in Korean she couldn't translate. She didn't ask what he'd said. Some truths were safer left unspoken. Chiamaka realized she was late on a Tuesday morning in early December. She'd been feeling off for weeks, nauseous, exhausted, emotional in ways that seemed excessive even for her. Stress, she'd told herself. The affair with Shi-woo was taking a toll. Sneaking around, keeping secrets. The constant awareness that this couldn't last. But 2 weeks late became 3.
Became 4.
She bought a test in a pharmacy across town where no one knew her. Took it in a university bathroom like a guilty teenager. 2 pink lines appeared with devastating clarity. Chiamaka sat on the cold floor and tried to process reality. Pregnant. At 55. With a 36-year-old gangster's baby. This was impossible. Medically improbable. The universe playing the cruelest joke imaginable. She took 3 more tests over the next 2 days. All positive. Terror and wonder warred inside her. She'd accepted years ago that motherhood wasn't in her future. Had made peace with that particular grief. And now, in the most impossible circumstances, with the most inappropriate man, she had to tell him. That night, when he arrived at her apartment with his usual confidence, she couldn't meet his eyes. What's wrong? He read her too easily now. Chiamaka? Sit down. He did, wariness creeping into his expression. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. I'm pregnant. The words fell like bombs in her quiet apartment. Shi-woo went absolutely still. Stared at her. Blinked once, slowly, as if processing a language he didn't quite understand. What?
I'm pregnant.
About 6 weeks, I think. Silence stretched. Expanded. Filled the room with crushing weight. Chiamaka watched emotions flicker across his face. Shock. Disbelief. Something else she couldn't read. I know this wasn't part of the agreement, she said quickly. I know we said this was casual. I know you didn't sign up for. He stood abruptly. Paced to her window. Stood there with his back to her, shoulders rigid. This was it. The moment he'd realized this was too complicated. Too messy. Too real. When he finally turned around, his eyes were wet. A baby. His voice cracked on the words. We're having a baby. Not accusation. Not anger. Wonder. He crossed to her in 3 strides, dropped to his knees in front of where she sat, and pressed his forehead against her stomach. A baby, he whispered again, like prayer or curse or miracle. Chiamaka's hands shook as she touched his hair. You're not angry? Angry? He looked up at her, and she saw it. Raw, uncomplicated joy.
Chiamaka, I'm terrified.
But angry? Never. This changes everything. I know. We can't keep this casual anymore. Was it ever casual? His hands gripped her hips. Be honest. Was any of this ever casual?
No. God, no.
She'd been lying to herself for months. I'm 55 years old. The risks. Then we handle them. Together. Your world. Protects family. Always. This baby. His hand spread across her still flat stomach. This baby makes you family. Which means no one can touch you. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe this could work. But already, her mind was cataloging everything that could go wrong. The medical risks. The social judgment. His dangerous life bleeding into theirs. The impossibility of raising a child in his world. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I." He stood, pulled her up with him, held her against his chest. "But we'll figure it out. We have to." That night, they didn't make love. Just held each other, both silently processing the magnitude of what was coming. Chiamaka lay awake long after Si-woo fell asleep, one hand resting on her belly, feeling the first stirrings of something that might have been joy beneath the terror. A baby. At 55. With a man whose hands had killed. The same hands now rested protectively over hers. This was insane. And somehow, despite everything, she wanted it. Meeting Si-woo's family was inevitable once the pregnancy became real. His mother, Park Sun-hee, received the news with the warmth of a winter storm. They met at the family compound in Gangnam, traditional architecture wrapped around modern luxury and barely concealed threat. Sun-hee looked at Chiamaka the way one might look at a particularly unfortunate mistake. Her disdain was palpable, precise, and delivered in rapid Korean that Si-woo kept trying to interrupt. Eventually, the older woman switched to accented English, each word chosen for maximum impact. The age was unacceptable. The nationality was problematic. The circumstances were shameful. Chiamaka was disrupting a carefully constructed world with her presence, her pregnancy, her very existence. Si-woo's uncle, Park Jae-sung, was more pragmatic but no less calculating. He assessed Chiamaka like a balance sheet, measuring value against liability. A child meant an heir. That had value. A foreign, older woman who couldn't navigate their world meant vulnerability. That had cost. The math, apparently, barely balanced. Chiamaka sat through it with the same dignity that had carried her through faculty politics and Lagos society gossip. She didn't defend herself. Didn't explain. Just existed in her quiet power and let them make their calculations. Only when Sun-hee suggested, delicately, that perhaps this pregnancy was a mistake that could be corrected did Chiamaka speak. Her voice was soft, but carried complete authority. "I understand your concerns, Mrs. Park. This situation is complicated. But this child is not a mistake. And I will not be discussing alternatives." The room went silent. Sun-hee's eyes narrowed. Then, surprisingly, something shifted in her expression. Not acceptance, but recognition, perhaps, of a worthy opponent. "You're stronger than you look," the older woman said finally. "I've had to be." Jae-sung laid out the terms like a business negotiation. Protection required control. Chiamaka would need to move. The apartment in Haebangkon was too exposed. Security detail. 24-hour surveillance. Her life would no longer be entirely her own. The cage was gilded, but still a cage. Chiamaka negotiated what she could. She would keep teaching. Would maintain some autonomy. Would not be relegated to decorative trophy or hidden shame. They agreed, reluctantly, because Si-woo made it clear those were his terms too. Driving back to her apartment, she was quiet. "That was brutal," Si-woo said finally. "I'm sorry. Don't apologize for your family. They were cruel. They were protective. I understand that." She stared out the window at Seoul sliding past. "But this is what my life is now, isn't it? Being weighed and measured. Being seen as liability instead of person. Not to me. To your world. Which is now my world too." He had no answer to that. The truth was settling in, cold and unavoidable. This wasn't a romance. It was a merger, complicated, dangerous, with terms she was still learning to read. And somewhere, growing inside her, was a child who would be born into this impossible situation. That night, alone in her apartment for what might be the last time before moving somewhere safer, Chiamaka stood in front of her mirror and studied her reflection. 55 years old. Pregnant. Entangled with a crime family. How had her quiet life come to this? She remembered Lagos. Remembered running from expectations and judgment. Remembered choosing Seoul because no one here cared who she was. Now she was about to become more visible than ever. Her phone buzzed. Si-woo. Asterisk, are you okay? Asterisk. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. Asterisk, I don't know. Asterisk. Asterisk, honest answer. I appreciate that. Asterisk. Asterisk, what are we doing? Asterisk. Asterisk, surviving. Together. Asterisk. Together. That word again, carrying weight it hadn't before. She placed her hand on her belly, still flat, still showing no evidence of the life growing inside. I'm scared. Me too. But I'm not letting anything happen to you. Either of you. Promises were easy to make. Harder to keep. Especially in his world. But for tonight, alone in her quiet apartment, she chose to believe him. Moving into the compound happened faster than Chiamaka could process. 1 week she was living independently in Haebangkon. The next, she was in a private wing of the Park family estate, surrounded by luxury that felt like a beautiful prison. Her life transformed overnight. Bodyguards flanked her everywhere, 2 stone-faced men who made her students nervous and her colleagues gossip. Teaching became performance art, delivering lectures while acutely aware of armed men in the back row. The pregnancy progressed. Morning sickness hit with brutal efficiency. She'd spend mornings vomiting, then drag herself to campus to discuss post-colonial theory while her stomach revolted. Shi-woo became increasingly protective, bordering on obsessive. He checked on her constantly. Had doctors on call. Monitored her diet, her stress levels, her every movement. The passion that had drawn them together began to suffocate under the weight of his anxiety. I can't breathe, she told him one evening after he'd questioned why she'd walked to the library instead of having books delivered. I'm keeping you safe. You're keeping me prisoner. That's not fair. Isn't it? She gestured at the compound walls visible through the window. I have guards. Curfews. Your family monitoring my every move. Where's the line between protection and control? When people stop trying to kill you. The words landed cold and hard. Because that was the reality they didn't discuss much. His enemies knew about her now. Knew about the pregnancy. Knew that Shi-woo, previously untouchable, focused, lethal, now had vulnerabilities. Sun, he thawed incrementally, brought her ginger tea for nausea, discussed baby names with the presumption that any child born into this family would carry Korean heritage primarily. The Nigerian half was acknowledged with the bare minimum of politeness. Chiamaka navigated it all with the survival skills of someone who'd spent a lifetime being other. She smiled, nodded, picked her battles carefully. At 4 months, the ultrasound revealed a boy. Shi-woo cried. Actually cried, staring at the screen like he was witnessing a miracle. His hand trembled when he touched her belly, feeling for movement that was still too subtle to detect. A son, he whispered, wonder bleeding through every syllable. Watching him, Chiamaka felt her carefully maintained emotional distance crumble. This wasn't just passion anymore. Hadn't been for months, though she'd kept pretending. She was falling in love with him. Had probably already fallen. And that terrified her more than any threat from his enemies. Because love made you vulnerable. Made you hope. Made you believe in futures that might not exist. The attack came on a Tuesday in late January. Chiamaka was leaving campus, flanked by her bodyguards as usual. Students had long stopped staring at the armed men who shadowed Professor Okafor. It was just part of the strange reality she inhabited now. The car pulled up wrong. Wrong color. Wrong plates. Wrong everything. Her lead bodyguard reacted with trained precision. He shoved her behind a concrete barrier, his body shielding hers as gunfire erupted. The world exploded into chaos and screaming. Chiamaka hit the ground hard, hands instinctively covering her belly. 5 months pregnant, feeling her son kick for the first time just yesterday, and now there were bullets and blood and... Her bodyguard fired back. Students scattered. Someone was screaming, maybe her, she couldn't tell. It lasted 30 seconds that felt like 30 hours. When silence finally crashed down, broken only by sirens in the distance, her bodyguard pulled her up roughly. We need to move. Now. Blood soaked his shoulder, but he didn't seem to notice. Just hauled her into their car and drove, fast and reckless, through Seoul streets. Not to a hospital, too obvious, too exposed. To a private clinic the family owned, staffed with doctors who understood discretion and danger in equal measure. They examined her thoroughly. Checked the baby's heartbeat, her vitals, everything. Both fine. Miraculously, devastatingly fine. Physically. Mentally, Chiamaka was fragmenting. She sat in the sterile examination room, hands shaking so badly she couldn't hold water, and tried to process that someone had just tried to kill her. Kill her baby. Kill everything. Shi-woo arrived like a storm, pale, furious, terrified. He pulled her into his arms without checking if she wanted it, and she realized she did. Desperately. Needed his solidity to anchor her to reality. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "God, I'm so sorry. Sorry didn't fix this. Sorry didn't erase the sound of gunfire or the smell of blood or the knowledge that her quiet academic life had been obliterated by violence." Later, in a secure room with guards outside, he told her what he knew. Rival family. The Kim syndicate, pushing for territory. They'd learned about her, about the baby, about how Shi-woo's attention had shifted. Saw it as weakness worth exploiting. "I handled it," he said, voice flat and cold. She knew what that meant. What handling it looked like in his world. More violence. More blood. More death. Because of her. Because of their child. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Yes, you can. People died tonight. People who would have killed you. Killed our son." His hands gripped her shoulders. "I won't apologize for protecting you. I'm a liability. Your mother was right. You're everything. I'm the reason you're vulnerable. You're the reason I have something worth protecting." His voice cracked. "Don't you understand? Before you, I was already dead. Just going through motions. You made me want to live." The confession broke something inside her. She collapsed against him and finally cried for the fear, for the impossibility, for the beautiful, terrible thing they'd created together. He held her through it all, whispering promises in Korean and English, mixing languages like mixing hope with reality. That night, she couldn't sleep. Just lay in the compound's secured room, one hand on her belly, feeling their son move. Alive. Safe. For now. But how long could that last? 3 days after the attack, Chiamaka made a decision. She was leaving. Taking their son somewhere safe, somewhere Shi-woo's world couldn't reach. Maybe back to Nigeria. Maybe somewhere else entirely. She'd survive. She always had. She packed quietly, methodically, while he was out handling whatever aftermath required handling. Left a note because she couldn't face saying goodbye. Got as far as the compound gates before Sun-hee intercepted her. The older woman looked at Chiamaka's bag, her tear-stained face, her obvious intention to flee. "Running," Sun-hee said quietly. "Not a question. I can't stay. I'll get him killed. You'll break him. Better broken than dead." Sun-hee studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, gestured to a nearby bench. "Sit." They sat in tense silence, two women from different worlds, bound by one complicated man. "My husband died when Shi-woo was 16, Sun-hee said finally. Shot by rivals who saw weakness. My older son died 3 years later. Same reason. I know what this life costs. Then you understand why I have to leave. I understand why you think you do. But you're wrong. How can you? Because my son has never been this alive. Never cared about anything beyond duty and survival. You changed that. You and that baby." Sun-hee's voice softened fractionally. "If you leave, he'll survive. But he'll be the monster everyone expects. The violence will consume him completely. He's already violent. He's controlled. There's a difference. But without you? Without something worth protecting beyond territory and power." Sun-hee shook her head. "He'll become what I fear most." Chiamaka's throat tightened. "What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough?" "Then you learn. Like I did. Like every woman who's loved a dangerous man has had to learn." The older woman's hand, surprisingly, covered hers. "You're stronger than you think. I saw that the first day. Why do you think I fought so hard against you? Because you're strong enough to change everything. And change is terrifying." Before Chiamaka could respond, cars screeched into the compound. Shi-woo emerged from one, saw her bag, saw her face. He understood immediately. "Chiamaka, I can't watch you die for me." He crossed to her in long strides, cupped her face with hands that trembled. "Then watch me live. With you. For you. For our son. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. His forehead pressed to hers. I know I'm asking everything of you. I know this life is brutal. But I'm asking anyway. Stay. Please. Let me protect you. I don't want to be protected. I want to be free. Then we'll find a way to give you both. His hands slid to her belly. But don't take him from me. Don't take either of you. I won't survive it. Sun-hee stood quietly. I'll give you privacy. Alone in the courtyard, Chiamaka and Shi-woo faced each other with everything unspoken finally demanding voice. I'm terrified, she admitted. Me too. I never wanted this life. I know. But the words stuck in her throat. 3 syllables she'd avoided saying. 3 syllables that changed everything. Say it, he whispered. Please. Whatever it is, say it. I love you. The confession tore out of her. I didn't want to. Tried not to. But I love you and it's destroying me because love makes you vulnerable and I can't lose anyone else. He kissed her. Hard. Desperate. Like he was drowning and she was air. I love you too, he said against her lips. Have for months. Was terrified to say it because you might run. I'm running now. Don't. Stay. Fight with me instead of running from me. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But wanting wasn't enough when bullets were real and death was certain and their son deserved better than this. I need time, she said finally. Space to think. To decide if I can really do this. Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Take the guards. Please. Let me keep you safe while you decide. She nodded because that much she could give him. He walked her to the car himself, hand never leaving the small of her back. At the door, he pulled her close one more time. However long you need, he murmured. I'll wait. But know this, you're mine. You and our son. Nothing changes that. Possession or promise, she couldn't tell. Maybe both. The safe house in Jeju was supposed to be secure. Chiamaka spent 3 days there thinking. Processing. Trying to decide if she could really build a life in Shi-woo's violent world. Minho came with her, surprisingly. The young man had been devastated to learn about the relationship, then gradually accepting. He sat with her on the safe house deck, talking about his brother's transformation. He's different with you, Minho said. Less cold. More human. Is that good or bad? In our world? Probably dangerous. He smiled sadly. But I prefer him this way. Even if it costs him. Sun-hee arrived on day 2, bringing baby clothes she'd apparently been secretly purchasing. The older woman's walls had crumbled significantly, revealing someone exhausted by decades of loss. I don't want to bury another son, she said quietly, folding tiny onesies. But I will if necessary. That's what we do. We survive. I don't know if I can be that strong. You already are. You just don't recognize it yet. On the 3rd evening, Chiamaka felt the baby kick hard, as if demanding attention. She placed her hand on her belly and made a decision. She would go back. Would try to build something in the midst of chaos. Would learn to be strong in ways she'd never imagined. Would love Shi-woo despite everything. She called him to say she was coming home. He answered on the first ring, voice rough with relief. Thank God. I'll send the helicopter. We're already arranged for transport. We'll be back tomorrow. I love you. I know. She smiled. I love you too. After hanging up, she felt lighter than she had in days. Then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A photo loaded slowly on the screen. Shi-woo's compound. Burning. And a message, asterisk, he can't protect you from us. No one can. Asterisk. The phone slipped from her hands. Sun-hee grabbed it, looked at the screen, and went white. Pilot, she barked in Korean. We need to leave. No. We can't go back, Chiamaka started. We're not going back. If they sent that message, they know where we are. This whole thing, it's a trap. Terror crystallized into clarity. The safe house wasn't safe. Never had been. They'd been isolated, made vulnerable, separated from Shi-woo's protection. Minho moved to the windows. Hyung would never let the compound burn. Unless he wasn't there. Unless he'd been drawn somewhere else. The helicopter was already warming up when Chiamaka heard them. Other helicopters. Multiple. Rising from different directions. No markings. No identification. Just death, closing in. Sun-hee grabbed her arm. Run. Now. They ran for the helicopter, Minho supporting Chiamaka's pregnant bulk. Her guards formed a perimeter, weapons raised. The first helicopter appeared over the tree line. Gunfire erupted. Chiamaka's world reduced to chaos, screaming, blood, the impossible weight of her belly making her slow, vulnerable. Someone shoved her into the helicopter. The pilot was already lifting off, abandoning ground support in favor of getting the primary asset airborne. Through the window, she saw her guards falling. Saw Sun-hee fire a gun. When had she grabbed a gun, with the competence of someone who'd done this before? Saw Minho stumble. No, Chiamaka screamed. But they were already airborne, already fleeing. The pursuing helicopters followed. The pilot shouted in Korean, words Chiamaka couldn't translate but understood viscerally. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, running from an enemy that had planned this perfectly. Her phone rang. Shi-woo. Where are you? Panic bled through his controlled voice. Chiamaka, where? They found us. Multiple helicopters. We're in the air, but gunfire stitched across their helicopter's tail. The aircraft lurched. We're hit, the pilot said flatly. Sun-hee grabbed the phone from Chiamaka. Spoke rapid Korean to her son. Her voice was steady, resigned, almost peaceful. Chiamaka understood without translation. Sun-hee was saying goodbye. No, she whispered. No, we're going to. The helicopter banked hard. The pilot was good, trying to lose pursuit, but they were damaged and outnumbered. Another burst of fire. This time, the pilot slumped. Sun-hee lunged for the controls, but she wasn't trained for this, couldn't. The helicopter spun. Chiamaka's last thought before impact was of her son. Their son. The life growing inside her that would never see his father's face. The life that Shi-woo would never hold. Through the phone, still connected, she heard him screaming her name. Then everything went black. Chiamaka woke to pain and darkness. Her body hurt everywhere. She tasted blood. Smelled smoke. But underneath it all, something moved. Inside her belly. Their son. Still alive. Still fighting. She tried to move, but couldn't. Tried to call for help, couldn't. Just lay there in the wreckage, one hand pressed to her stomach, feeling her baby kick. Alive. They were both still alive. For now. In the distance, she heard helicopters. More of them. Friend or foe, she couldn't tell. Footsteps approached. Someone bent over her. A face swam into view, unfamiliar, male, with eyes that held no mercy. Found her, he said in accented English. She's alive. Barely. The baby? Can't tell. Boss said to bring them both. Boss. Not Shi-woo. Someone else. Hands grabbed her, lifted her. Pain screamed through her body. Please, she managed. My baby? Your baby is leverage, the man said simply. Against Park Shi-woo. He'll give us everything to get you back. He'll kill you. The man smiled. Maybe. But first, we'll see how much he's willing to sacrifice. How much he's willing to bleed. How much of his empire he'll surrender for you. They carried her to a waiting helicopter. The last thing Chiamaka saw before losing consciousness was Seoul in the distance, lights glittering like broken promises. And somewhere in that city, Shi-woo was coming for her. She prayed he'd arrive in time. Prayed he wouldn't have to choose between saving her and saving their son. Prayed this wasn't how their impossible love story ended with her in enemy hands, their baby's life hanging by a thread, and the man she loved being torn apart by choices no one should have to make. The helicopter lifted off, carrying her into darkness and uncertainty.